The letter was already written when he came down to fire her. 10 floors below, Navy Klein was on the phone with the man they were supposed to marry her boss to. She wasn't asking. She was dictating terms. Kang Tae-ho stopped in the doorway. He was holding an envelope. Inside the envelope was her name and one cold word, dismissed, written by him 6 minutes ago. Navy Klein is 30, black, beautiful, slender build with an hourglass silhouette. Assistant to the CEO of Kang Dominion Holdings, hotels, ports, private transport, security. She organizes an empire she was never supposed to own a piece of. Wine red dress. Small gold earrings. No cross tonight. Kang Tae-ho, 36, head of the Kang family. Black three-piece suit. White shirt open at the collar. A Korean dragon tattooed up the left side of his neck, curling behind the ear. He never raises his voice. He came downstairs to protect her by throwing her away. He heard her voice through the door first. Calm, surgical. I solve problems before they become corporate corpses, Mr. Beak. He didn't knock. He opened the door and saw the assistant he thought he was saving standing in the middle of the war he thought was his, with the rival family boss on speaker, an alternative contract on the desk, and a clock ticking toward midnight. The envelope in his hand suddenly weighed nothing, and what she said next, he was not ready to hear. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The fluorescent light above desk 7 flickered once, and Navy Klein did not look up. She circled the third clause of the engagement contract with a red pen, drew a small arrow into the margin, and wrote the word trap in letters so small only she could read them. The clock behind her ticked to 2200. The 41st floor of the Kang Dominion Holdings Tower had emptied hours ago. Only her lamp was still on. She uncapped a second pen. Black this time. She wrote 3 questions under trap. Why does Article 9 reference the Beak Port concession by folio number and not by name? Why does the marriage settlement clause list Una Beak's shares before her signature? Why has Beak June 6 lawyer sent 4 drafts in 9 days when the previous merger took 11 months? Navy Klein was 30. She had been executive assistant to Kang Tae-ho for 4 years. Everyone in this building called her Miss Klein. Nobody called her by her first name except him, and only when the door was closed. She reached for her coffee, cold. She drank it anyway. The vestido midi in deep wine clung to her waist the way alfaiataria was supposed to cling, as if the fabric had been argued into obedience. Her cabello, castanho quais preto, fell in small defined curls to her shoulders, parted down the center. The gloss on her lips had worn off 2 hours ago. She had not noticed. She was on page 41 of 83. Her earpiece chimed. Miss Klein. The voice was Advisor Han, 62, loyal for 29 years or so the file said. Mr. Kang is asking whether you will be joining the board dinner tomorrow. Tell Mr. Kang I will be reviewing the Beak engagement contract tomorrow at 8, he specifically asked. Then tell him specifically I am doing my job. She ended the call before Advisor Han could soften it. She circled another clause, Article 11. She wrote gate in the margin. Down 2 floors, Kang Tae-ho stood at his window and watched the reflection of a woman he had not yet decided to save. His office had no lamp on. The city gave him enough light. Seoul burned like an argument outside the glass. He could see her 40 stories above him in the mirror line of the building's northern facade, and he could see himself in the same reflection, and he did not like the geometry of either. He rolled his sleeves back 1 fold. The dragon tattoo on the left side of his neck disappeared into the collar of the white shirt. The Italian black 3-piece hung open at the throat. He had removed the tie 4 hours ago and had not remembered why. He turned from the window. He walked to the desk. He picked up the photograph of Una Beak his security team had placed there yesterday afternoon. 27. Silk pearl dress. Eyes like someone who had been counting exits since she was 11. He looked at the photograph for a long moment. He set it face down. Upstairs, Navy Klein flipped to page 42. She read the paragraph 3 times. Then she stopped breathing for a full second. Then she started again. She uncapped the red pen. She did not circle. She underlined. 6 times, under one sentence. Upon dissolution of the marriage or death of either party, controlling interest in Kang Dominion Holdings port assets shall transfer under the joint administration of the Beek Family Trust as defined in Schedule C. A Schedule C had not been attached to the draft. She stood up. She sat back down. She stood up again. She walked to the window. The building's northern facade threw her reflection back at her, a woman in wine-colored alfalfa standing perfectly still, a red pen in her right hand, 40 stories in the air, holding something she was not supposed to be able to read. She said it out loud so the room would carry it. He's not marrying her. He's opening the door for the man who wants his throat. Her voice did not shake. She had trained her voice not to shake at 23. The year the woman who raised her died and left her a stack of medical bills and a note that said, "You are the one who keeps her head, baby, always." Navy had kept her head ever since. She kept it now. She went back to desk 7. She opened her laptop. She began pulling the last 4 years of Beek family shipping manifests through the archive she was not, on paper, supposed to have access to. The elevator on the 41st floor gave one soft ping. Navy did not look up. Only 2 people had the credentials to reach this floor after 2200. One of them was in the elevator. She knew because the security panel on her desk showed one dot rising, and she knew whose dot it was without checking the color. Kang Tae-ho stepped out, silent shoes, silent floor. He walked the length of the corridor toward her lamp. She heard him because she had been trained to hear him, 4 years of learning the exact pause between his footfall and his breathing, the way he shifted his weight from left to right when he was thinking, the small dry sound he made when he passed his right hand along his jaw. He stopped at the doorway of her office. He did not enter. "You are still here. I am still here. It's 22:10. I know what time it is." He did not smile. He rarely smiled, but something in the angle of his mouth moved 0.5 millimeter and Navy caught it and she filed it the way she filed everything about him. "You should eat." "I ate." "You did not." She looked up. Their eyes met. 4 years of protocol stood between them like a wall of tempered glass. He had never crossed it. She had never invited him to. "Mr. Kang, Miss Klein, was there something specific?" He held a folder in his left hand. He did not offer it. He looked at the contracts spread across her desk instead, pages fanned out, red pen marks, black pen marks, small arrows, small words she had written to herself. "You have been working on that for 6 hours. 7. Why?" She could have lied. She had lied to him before, small professional lies, the kind that oiled the gears of a company his size. She did not lie now. "Because whoever drafted Article 11 of the marriage settlement is trying to kill you." He did not move. His face did not move. His hand did not go to his jaw. He looked at her across her lamp for a count of 3, and the count of 3 between Kang Tae-ho and another human being was longer than most conversations. "Explain." She did not stand. She turned her laptop toward him. She pointed at the underlined paragraph. She said one sentence. "Schedule C is missing on purpose." He walked in. He did not sit. He read the paragraph. He read it again. He read Article 9. He read Article 11. He read the flagged folio number on the Beek Port concession. He was quiet for the length of a full minute. Navy watched him breathe. She counted his exhales because that was how she measured his mood. 7 exhales in. He said her name. "Navy," not Miss Klein. She did not react. She kept her face where it had to be. "Yes, how long have you known?" "Since page 42, about 40 minutes ago." "Who else knows?" "Just you." "Who else has seen the draft?" Advisor hand sent it up. Advisor Choi CC'd. Legal saw pages 1 through 20. Nobody passed page 30 except me and now you. He nodded once. He picked up the red pen from her desk. He looked at it as if he had never seen a red pen before. He set it back down. He turned toward the window. His back was to her. The dragon on his neck showed above the collar. "You will not tell me to cancel the engagement." It was not a question. It was a test. Navy had been passing his tests for 4 years. "No, canceling the engagement tells Beek Junsik you saw the clause. That's a war you're not ready to fight in daylight." "Then what?" "Then you finish reading, you let me finish reading, and then you decide." He was quiet a long time. He said, still without turning around, "You have all eras." She had not looked in a mirror since 7 a.m. She did not doubt him. "I've been working." "For me." For the company, for me, she did not answer. She let the silence do it. He turned. He walked past her desk. At the doorway he stopped, and without looking back, he said the thing he had not said to another person in 11 years. "Thank you." Then he was gone. The elevator descended 2 floors. His lamp turned on. Navy sat very still for a long moment, and then she went back to page 42, and then she opened a blank document, and at the top of it she typed one word. Countermove. At 2300, 41 floors above the streetlights of Seoul, the daughter of a woman who had once said, "You are the one who keeps her head, baby," always began building the plan that would either save Kang Dominion Holdings or end her career inside it, and she did not yet know which. She only knew she was the only person still in the building who could tell the difference. Down 2 floors, Kang Tae-ho opened the folder he had brought upstairs and had never delivered. Inside it, in his own handwriting, in the black ink he used only for things that mattered, sat a single-page letter dated with tomorrow's date, and at the bottom of the letter was Navy Klein's name, and above her name were 3 sentences that dissolved 4 years of her life into the phrase, with immediate effect. He looked at the letter for a long time. He did not sign it. Not yet. He set it in the top drawer, face down. Next to the ring he had bought 6 months ago on the afternoon, she had rerouted an entire board meeting through a blackout without raising her voice once. He closed the drawer. He walked back to the window. He looked at the reflection of the 41st floor. Her lamp was still on. He sat down in the leather chair he had not used since June. He turned it toward the window. He crossed his ankles. He set his right hand along his jaw the way he did when he was thinking. He was thinking about the woman on the 41st floor. He was thinking about the first day she had walked into this building. December. 26 years old. Wine wool coat, salt on the shoulders, a resume printed on paper heavier than any resume in Seoul had ever been printed on. Advisor Han had been the one to hire her. Advisor Han had said the words, "She asked me 3 questions I could not answer." Kang Tae-ho had not looked up from his desk. He had said only, "Keep her." He had not spoken to her for the first 4 months. He had watched her instead. He had watched her fix a translation error in a contract that would have cost the company $18 million. He had watched her sit through a meeting in which the head of legal called her the girl, and had watched her respond, at the end of that meeting, by leaving a corrected copy of legal's own brief on his desk, with the errors circled in the same small red hand she was using now. Legal had apologized within a week. Nobody had called her the girl again. By the 2nd year, she had learned the exact angle at which he preferred a folder placed. By the 3rd year, she had learned the pause he took before saying no. By the 4th year, she had learned the difference between the silence he used with enemies and the silence he used with her. He was thinking about that difference now. Upstairs, Navy uncapped a green pen. She used green only for what she was going to bury. She wrote 3 names in the margin of page 43. Advisor Han, Advisor Choi, Advisor Rowe. She circled Advisor Rowe twice. Something about the way the drafts had arrived, always through Rowe's office, always after 2100, always with a page missing. She pulled her laptop closer. She opened a folder buried 3 levels deep in the archive, a folder whose access log she had scrubbed twice this year. Beak shipping records, 14 months. She sorted by receiving port. She stopped at 3 entries dated the same week as the first engagement draft, 3 container ships, 3 consignments, 3 signatures. All 3 signatures belonged to a man who had died in April. Navy put the pen down. She said one word to the empty office. Ghost. The Beaks were signing manifests with a dead man's name. Someone at Kang Dominion Holdings had let those manifests pass without flagging them. The engagement contract was not the beginning of the takeover. It was the middle. She reached for the phone. She stopped. She pulled her hand back. She looked at the door. She looked at the corridor. She thought about who else was still in the building. She counted floors down to Kang Tae-ho's office and knew, without checking the panel, that his lamp was on. She opened her personal drawer. She took out a small silver USB stick and slid it into the laptop. She began copying the manifests, the drafts, and the folio numbers into a single encrypted file. She named the file with today's date and 1 letter. K. While the file copied, she rested both hands flat on the desk and closed her eyes for exactly 10 seconds. It was the trick her mother had taught her when she was 11, 10 seconds with your palms on the table. When you open your eyes, you decide who you are for the next hour. She opened her eyes. She decided. She was the person who kept her head. She was the person who read Article 11. She was the person who saw the ghost signature. She was the person who was going to walk into Kang Tae-ho's office in the morning with a plan, not a warning. The file finished copying. She locked the USB in the drawer. She locked the drawer with a key she kept on a thin gold chain around her neck, hidden under the wine collar of the vestido. She sat back. 2 floors below, Kang Tae-ho stood up from the leather chair. He walked to the drawer. He looked at it. He did not open it. He walked away. He walked back. He put his hand on the drawer. He did not open it. The letter inside had been written the day advisor Han had told him, over a glass of soju neither of them had drunk, that the men are noticing, Mr. Kang. They are noticing that you listen to her more than you listen to any of us. Advisor Han had said it kindly. Kang Tae-ho had heard the kindness. He had also heard the warning underneath. In this world, a woman who was listened to by a man like him did not stay a woman who was listened to. She became a target. She became a lever. She became a photograph that arrived in the wrong envelope with the wrong caption. He had seen it happen twice before to 2 other men who had made the mistake of letting a person outside the family become indispensable. The letter in the drawer was supposed to save her. That was what he had told himself when he wrote it. Fire her. Pay her the severance of a small country. Send her to a firm in Singapore where the beaks could not reach. Let her live. He had been lying to himself the whole time. He knew it now. The letter was not to save her. The letter was to save him from the fact that he had, 6 months ago, walked into a jewelry store on Cheongdam-dong on a Tuesday afternoon, in the middle of a workday, and bought a ring in a color he had watched her wear once, a small warm gold, nothing showy, the kind of gold a woman who read contracts for a living would notice was the right gold. He had not told anyone. He had put the ring in the drawer. He had written the letter 3 months later, when the Beak engagement had been forced on him by the council, and he had understood that the only way to keep her safe from what was coming was to send her away before it arrived. Now she was upstairs, at 23:15, dismantling the takeover with a red pen. He took his hand off the drawer. He went back to the window. He looked at the reflection of the 41st floor. Her lamp was still on. It would still be on at midnight. It would still be on at 3. He knew her. He did not know yet that he did not know her at all. Upstairs, Navy heard the elevator descend, stop at the 39th and stay there. She waited. She counted. When it did not rise again, she took the small silver key from her collar, unlocked the drawer, took out the USB, closed the drawer, locked it, and returned the key to the chain. She slid the USB into the inside pocket of the vestido, the one she had sewn in herself 3 years ago, the pocket nobody knew about. Then she picked up the red pen and turned the page. The red pen moved like a scalpel. Navy underlined a phrase in the 3rd clause, then a phrase in the 7th, then drew a thin line connecting them across the margin. 2 sentences that looked innocent on their own. Together, they built a corridor. A corridor with only one door, and that door opened into Kang Dominion Holdings' Central Holding Company. She stared at the connection for a long moment. Then she wrote 3 words in the margin. Trojan horse clause. She did not underline them. She did not need to. The building was quiet in the way only very expensive buildings are quiet at night. No hum of fluorescent lights. No cheap air handlers rattling. Just the soft breath of climate control and the distant tick of the antique clock Tae-ho kept on the credenza behind his desk. A clock older than the company. A clock that had belonged to his grandfather and to a war and to a version of the family that did not yet know it would become what it became. Navy heard the elevator before she heard the footsteps. She closed the folder. She capped the red pen. She placed both objects at a precise angle relative to the edge of the desk, because Tae-ho noticed angles and she had learned, over 4 years, to give him nothing to fix. The footsteps stopped outside her office, then continued past, then stopped again, further down the corridor at his door. Not him, someone else. She heard the low voice of Advisor Cho, one of the older men on the council. 62, silver at the temples, a permanent stoop from too many years bowing to men who did not deserve bows. Cho spoke Korean quickly, quietly, the way men speak when they are certain the walls are on their side. Navy's Korean was better than any of them knew. She had learned it in the first 8 months, alone, from language apps and courtroom transcripts and the sound of Taeho ordering his coffee. She never used it. She never let them see it. It was one of 3 weapons she kept sheathed. Tonight, she used it. She rose from her chair without a sound. She crossed to the wall her office shared with the small conference room where Cho had gone. She placed her palm flat against the paneling. She did not press her ear to the wall. She did not need to. The building was too well built to leak sound, but the vent in the ceiling was not. Warm air moved from that room into hers, and voices moved with the warm air if you knew where to stand. She knew where to stand. He listens to her more than he listens to us, Cho was saying. The beak men noticed. They have been asking questions. A second voice, younger, advisor Han, 48, ambitious, the one who smiled at Navy in meetings and never once made eye contact. What kind of questions? Her name, her address, whether she has family in the city, whether she has family at all. A pause, the kind of pause that had wait. They are not asking because they are curious, Han said finally. No, Cho said, they are not. Navy did not move. Her hand stayed flat against the wall. Her breathing stayed even. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a small mechanical part of her, the part that had kept her alive through 3 foster homes and 1 scholarship interview, and 1 night in Seoul when she had walked home alone through a district she should not have walked through, that small mechanical part began cataloging exits. 2 elevators. 1 service stairwell. 1 fire stairwell on the north side that most people forgot existed because the door was disguised as a maintenance closet. Parking garage on B2. Her car on B3 because she always parked 1 level lower than the executives. Because she had learned, 4 years ago, that women who wanted to disappear did well to park where no one thought to look. Cho was still speaking. The chairman must be told. He will not fire her. He will if he understands what she has become to them. A pressure point. That is all a woman ever is in this life, Han. A pressure point on the man who loves her. Navy's jaw did not move, her expression did not change, but something inside her went very still and very cold, the way water goes still and cold before it freezes. The man who loves her. Cho had said it like a fact, like something everyone at the table already knew and had simply agreed not to name. She removed her hand from the wall. She returned to her desk. She sat down. She opened the folder again. She uncapped the red pen. She read the next clause. She did not read the next clause. She stared at it, and the letters did not resolve into meaning. The chairman must be told. She heard the 2 men leave the conference room. She heard them walk down the corridor. She heard them stop at Taeho's office. She heard the soft double knock, Cho's knock, always 2, never 3, and then the door opening and then closing. She looked at her watch. 10:47. She capped the pen again. She stood. She walked to the small mirror she kept inside the door of her supply cabinet, because she had learned that the women who survived in rooms like this one were the women who checked their face before every door they opened. She checked her face. The gloss on her lips was still perfect. The liner at the corner of her eye had not smudged. The small gold hoops caught the desk lamp and threw 2 faint circles of light onto her cheek. She looked like a woman who had not just heard her own name spoken as a liability. Good. She closed the cabinet. She picked up the folder. She walked out of her office and down the corridor. She did not walk toward Taeho's door. She walked past it. She walked to the small kitchenette at the end of the executive floor and she made 2 cups of tea, genmatcha for him, barley for herself. She placed both cups on a lacquered tray. She carried the tray back down the corridor. She stopped outside his door. She heard Cho's voice through the wood. Low, insistent. A distraction, Chairman, nothing more, but a distraction the beak men have identified, and what they identify, they use. Taeho's voice came back, not louder, never louder. Just lower, in the way a knife is lower than a shout. You are telling me to remove her. I am telling you to protect her. By removing her, by placing her somewhere the beak cannot see. A silence, then Taeho, quieter still. Leave, both of you. The door opened. Cho and Han stepped out. Cho saw Navy standing there with the tray, and his face did not move at all, which was how Navy knew he had already sold her. Han did the smiling thing. She did not smile back. She inclined her head one precise degree, which was the exact degree required to acknowledge a superior without granting him respect. She walked into Tiho's office. She set the tray on the low table by the window. She placed his cup on the coaster to the left of his hand because he was left-handed and because he had never once told her that, but she had learned it in her second week. She placed her own cup on the opposite side of the table. She sat, uninvited, in the chair across from him. He was standing at the window. The city was beneath him. Seoul at that hour was a field of white and gold light, and Tiho was a silhouette against it, black suit against burning glass. He did not turn. "You should go home, Miss Klein. I have 3 more clauses to review. They can wait until morning." "They cannot." He turned then. His face did what his face did when he was deciding not to feel something. A small tightening around the eyes. A slight lift at the corner of the mouth that was not a smile. The scar of a smile. "Go home," he said. "Chairman, there is a hidden clause on page 14, 2 sentences in different sections. Read together, they route the holding company's voting rights through the marriage. If the marriage is annulled, dissolved, or invalidated within 7 years, the voting rights transfer to the Beek family trust. The Beek did not just try to marry your rival's daughter into your house, they tried to install a door." He looked at her. She looked back. The clock behind him ticked once, twice. "Show me," he said. She rose. She walked to his desk. She opened the folder. She turned it toward him. She pointed with the capped red pen, not the tip, the flat end, because in this office you never pointed a sharp thing at the man who signed your checks, and she traced the corridor she had drawn in the margin. He read it. He read it again. His right hand rose to his jaw and passed slowly along the line of it from ear to chin. The gesture she had seen 1,000 times. The gesture that meant he was rebuilding the world in his head. "When did you see this?" 9 minutes ago. "And you made tea before you brought it to me." "I made tea because Cho and Han were in here first, and I did not want them to see me walk in with an emergency." He looked up at her. The look lasted 3 seconds. In that 3 seconds, something moved behind his eyes that she had not seen in 4 years of working across a desk from him. Not surprise, not gratitude, something older than either. Recognition. He closed the folder. "Go home, Miss Klein. Chairman, home, now, not because I do not need you, because I do." She did not move. He turned back to the window. His voice, when it came again, was so quiet she almost did not catch it. "They asked about your family tonight." "I know." He did not ask how she knew. He never asked her how she knew things. It was one of the reasons she had stayed 4 years. "Go home, Navy." He had never used her first name before. Not once, not in 4 years. She left the tea. She left the folder. She walked out of his office and down the corridor to her own, and she closed her door. And she stood in the middle of the room with her hands very still at her sides, and she did not let herself think about the sound of her name in his mouth. She sat down. She opened her laptop. She began to draft a memorandum outlining every legal mechanism by which the hidden clause could be neutralized without collapsing the parent contract. She worked for 40 minutes. She was very good, and she worked very fast, and by the time she was finished, she had built a small, quiet architecture that would save the company and cost her nothing. She emailed it to no one. She saved it to her personal drive, encrypted under a file name that meant nothing to anyone but her. Then she went home. She did not know that at 11:42 that night, in his office 2 floors above her empty one, Tiho was doing something he had never done in 8 years of running Kang Dominion Holdings. He was writing a letter by hand. The paper was thick and cream and bore no letterhead. The pen was the fountain pen his grandfather had carried out of a country that no longer existed. He wrote slowly. He wrote in English because she was American, and because there was a version of cruelty that only worked in the language of the person you were being cruel to. He wrote each sentence twice before committing it to the page. He wrote that her services were no longer required. He wrote that the company had grown beyond the scope of the role for which she had been hired. He wrote that a generous severance had been arranged. He wrote that she was not to return to the building. He wrote each of these sentences as if it were a shield, and each shield was a lie, and the lie was the shape of a truth he could not say. The truth was that he had listened, 3 hours ago, to advisor Cho describe her as a pressure point. And he had understood in that moment that a pressure point was exactly what she had become, not to the beak, but to him. They had learned to find him through her. They had learned that if they wanted to hurt Kang Tae-ho, they did not need to reach Kang Tae-ho. They needed only to reach a slender black woman with hourglass curves and a red pen and a wine-colored dress who worked on the 42nd floor and parked one level lower than she should. He signed the letter. He folded it. He placed it in an envelope. He wrote her name on the envelope in the small, careful hand he used for things that mattered to him, and he sealed the envelope, and he placed it in the top drawer of his desk. He would give it to her tomorrow. He would give it to her tomorrow, and he would watch her face not move because her face never moved, and he would tell himself that this was the price of keeping her alive. And he would go home to a bed he had not slept in for 3 days, and he would lie in the dark, and he would not think about the fact that he had used his own last name, his grandfather's name, his father's name, as a weapon to send her somewhere the enemy could not find her. That was the plan. Navy woke at 4 in the morning with the plan already dismantled in her head. She did not know about the letter. She did not need to know about the letter. She knew about the clause, and the clause had told her everything. She lay in the dark of her apartment, and she stared at the ceiling, and she ran the corridor of those 2 sentences through her mind again. And this time she read them not as a trap the beak had built for Tae-ho, but as a mirror. Because the beak would not have written the clause that way if they did not know something about the man they were writing it for. And what they knew was this: Kang Tae-ho would sign a marriage contract he despised if the marriage was framed as duty. Duty was the door, Unibeak was the key, and she, Navy Klein, was the thing standing in front of the lock. She sat up. She turned on the small lamp beside her bed. She reached for the notebook she kept on the nightstand. She began to write. Not a memorandum this time, not a legal architecture, a list of names, council members, their debts, their marriages, their children in international schools, their apartments in Cheongdam, the one with a mistress in Busan, the one whose brother-in-law had done 6 months for tax fraud in 2019, the one who had, twice in the last quarter, taken calls in the corridor with the door not quite closed. She wrote for an hour. When she was done, she had 6 names, and beside 3 of them she had drawn a small red circle. Those were the ones the beak already owned. She closed the notebook. She lay back down. She did not sleep. At 6, she rose. She showered. She chose the Vinho dress again because the men on the council were creatures of pattern, and creatures of pattern were destabilized by repetition of the very things they had already catalogued as safe. She lined her eyes. She glossed her mouth. She put on the small gold hoops and the thin gold bracelet. She looked at herself in the mirror, and she did not blink. At 7:40, she walked into the lobby of Kang Dominion Holdings. At 7:43, she stepped into the elevator. At 7:46, the doors opened on the 42nd floor, and Tae-ho was standing at the reception desk with an envelope in his left hand and a face he had built at 4 in the morning. And he saw her, and his face did the thing his face did, the small tightening around the eyes, the slight lift at the corner of the mouth that was not a smile. He said, very quietly, "Miss Klein, come with me." She followed him down the corridor. She did not look at the envelope in his hand. She did not need to. She already knew what was inside it, and she already knew what she was going to do about it. And she already knew that by the end of the day, the man walking 3 steps ahead of her would understand something about her that no one, not Cho, not Han, not the beak, not her own mother in the last year of her life, had ever quite been allowed to see. She smiled, very slightly, at the back of his head. Then she followed him into his office and closed the door behind her. The office smelled of cold coffee and older paper. Navy set her tablet on the long walnut table and stood for a moment with her palms flat against the wood, breathing the way her grandmother had taught her to breathe before difficult prayers. Slow in, slower out. The city outside the glass was a grid of small yellow fires, 27 floors below, and none of them belonged to her. She had sent the last of the junior staff home at 9. The senior counselors had left before that, one by one, each with a nod that lingered too long on her face. She had felt the weight of those nods, men who bow only when they are measuring a neck. She sat down. She opened the first folder. The Beek dossier was thicker than she remembered. Navy had built it herself over 18 months, quietly in the margins of other assignments. Shell companies in Busan, a shipping route that never moved cargo but moved paper. 3 politicians who had visited Beek June 6 estate the same weekend a prosecutor lost his job. She had built it because Tiho had once said, in a tired hour, that a woman who did not understand her enemies was decoration. She had refused to be decoration ever again. She turned the page. She kept turning. By 11, she had a spine, not a case. A spine, the vertebrae of a story that could be told to the right ear at the right hour and end a man's evening. She wrote it out in her own hand on a legal pad because she did not trust the servers tonight. Her handwriting was small and even the letters standing up straight like a choir. At 11:40, she stopped writing. She read what she had written. She read it again. Then she picked up the desk phone, the old one with the wire, the one that did not route through the company switchboard. She dialed the number she had memorized 3 months ago from a business card she was never supposed to see. It rang twice. Yobosyo. The voice was rough with sleep and older than the man who owned it wanted to admit. Navy did not smile, but something in her mouth relaxed. She had chosen the hour deliberately. 11:48 was the hour when powerful men are tired enough to be honest and awake enough to remember. Chairman Beek. This is Navy Klein. I work for Kang Tiho. A pause, then a small dry laugh, the kind that means a man is buying seconds. The assistant, she agreed. Her voice was low and even. She had practiced the tone in the elevator on the way up. Not warm, not cold. The temperature of a doctor who has already read the scan. It is late, Miss Klein. I know what time it is, Chairman. I chose it. I solve problems before they become corporate corpses, and it is easier to solve them when the men who created them are alone in their studies with the second glass already poured. She heard him breathe. She heard ice move in a glass. She had guessed the whiskey and been right. You are a bold woman. I am a prepared woman. There is a difference, and men your age tend to confuse them. Silence, a long one. She let it grow. She had learned from Tiho that silence, offered without apology, was its own kind of weapon. She sat very straight in her chair. Her hand was steady on the receiver. Somewhere below her, an elevator hummed. Speak, then, Beek said finally, since you have already decided to. Your daughter Yuna is scheduled to marry my employer in 19 days. The contract your lawyers drafted contains a clause on page 42. Subsection C, regarding the transfer of hotel management shares in the event of, and I quote, unforeseen incapacity of the groom during the first year of union. The language is elegant. I compliment your counsel. But I have read a great many elegant clauses, Chairman, and I know what a trapdoor sounds like when it is disguised as a floorboard. He said nothing. You are not marrying your daughter to Kang Tiho, Navy went on. Her voice did not rise. It only clarified the way water clarifies when it stops moving. You are inserting her. You are using a wedding as a service entrance. Yuna is a key, and once the door is unlocked, you intend to walk through it. You have imagination, Miss Klein. I have documents, Chairman. Imagination is what men accuse women of having when the truth becomes inconvenient. Ice again, a longer swallow this time. And what, he said, do you propose to do with this imagination? I propose an alternative, Navy said. One that lets everyone at this table keep their dignity, which, in my experience, is the only currency old men truly refuse to lose. Kang Dominion will lease, not sell. Lease. The Northern Port access your family has wanted for 11 years. The lease will run 20 years at a rate your accountant will call generous and your pride will call fair. In exchange, the engagement to Yuna is dissolved publicly, with a statement drafted by me that protects her name and yours. And my daughter? The question came faster than the others. It surprised her. It should not have. Your daughter, Navy said, softer now, only slightly, is 27 years old and has not chosen a single thing about her own life since she was 15. She has been an asset on your balance sheet for so long that she has forgotten she has a pulse of her own. I am not proposing to free her. I do not have that power. I am proposing to remove her from a contract she did not write, in a room she was not invited to. What she does after that is not my business, and, forgive me, Chairman, it should stop being yours. The line was quiet for a long time. She could hear him breathing. She could hear, faintly, a clock somewhere in his study. A grandfather clock, she guessed. Men like Beek Junsik always kept a grandfather clock. It made time feel like inheritance. "You are speaking to me," he said at last, "as if you have already won." "No, Chairman, I am speaking to you as if I have already worked. Winning is a word men use when they want to feel like gladiators. I am not a gladiator. I am the person who cleans the arena before dawn so that no one remembers there was blood." She heard him set the glass down. "You have until midnight," she said. "That is 12 minutes from the moment I end this call. If I have your verbal agreement by then, my counsel will draft the alternative contract tonight and courier it to your residence by 6 in the morning. If I do not, the dossier I have built goes to 3 journalists, 2 prosecutors, and one of your cousins in Daegu who has been waiting a long time to sit in your chair. I will not enjoy that outcome, Chairman, but I will not lose sleep over it either. I have not slept properly in 6 weeks. One more night is a small tax. You would burn a house down. I would open a window, Chairman. The fire is already inside. You lit it." She did not wait for his answer. She said, 12 minutes, and set the receiver down gently, because slamming it would have been a girl's gesture, and she was not a girl tonight. She stood. She walked around the long table once, slowly, letting her hand trail along the wood. She counted the seconds under her breath in Korean, because Korean numbers had always felt heavier to her than English ones, and heavy was what she needed tonight. Sip. I. Sam. The numbers moved through her mouth like small stones dropped into a well. She had learned them from him in an afternoon 2 years ago when he had been bored between meetings and she had been curious between spreadsheets. She had never told him she still counted in his language when she was frightened. Her heels made no sound on the carpet. She had chosen the shoes for silence. Her whole outfit tonight had been chosen for silence: the wine-dark midi that moved like a closed door, the small gold at her ears and wrist, the neckline that suggested a heart without offering it. She had dressed for a battle no one was supposed to see. She sat again. She did not look at the phone. She looked at the contract on the table, the one with Una Beek's name on page 1, and she began, very calmly, to mark it up. A red pen in her right hand, a blue pen in her left. Corrections in red, alternatives in blue. She worked the way surgeons work, without hurry and without hesitation, the wrists loose, the eyes narrow. She did not know that Tiho had already left his floor, 28 stories above the street. In the private elevator that ran only to his office and hers, Kang Tiho stood alone with an envelope in his inside jacket pocket. The envelope contained 1 sheet of paper. On the sheet was the cruelest sentence he had ever written in his own hand, disguised as mercy. Effective immediately, Miss Klein is released from her duties at Kang Dominion Holdings with full severance and the gratitude of the board. He had written the words at his desk with the door closed and the lamp low, and when he had signed his name, he had felt something inside his chest close like a shutter. The elevator descended in silence. He did not look at his reflection in the brass. He had rehearsed what he would say. He would not sit. He would remain standing. He would tell her that the men of Beek had begun asking her name in rooms where her name should not be spoken, and that a woman whose name was spoken in those rooms did not have long. He would tell her that this was protection. He would use that word, protection. He would not use the other word, the one that lived under his tongue like a stone he had swallowed years ago and never passed. The elevator stopped. The doors opened without sound. The corridor to the strategy room was dim. Only every third light was on, the way she always left them when she worked late. She said full light made her think like a committee, and she preferred to think like a single person. He walked the corridor slowly. His footsteps were the only sound. His right hand rose without his permission and passed along the line of his jaw. He reached her door. He did not knock. Later, he would not be able to say why. He would tell himself it was because he did not want to give her the courtesy of a warning she was about to lose. He would tell himself that a man delivering a dismissal owes the recipient no ceremony. Both would be lies. The truth was smaller and more dangerous. The truth was that some part of him, a part he had spent 8 years training into silence, wanted very badly to see her before she saw him. Wanted one unguarded second. He opened the door. The room was low-lit and warm. The long walnut table was covered end to end with paper, contracts fanned like a hand of cards, folders stacked in careful towers, the red pen and the blue pen resting parallel to each other, as if they were siblings who had learned not to fight. Navy stood at the head of the table with her back mostly to him, the desk phone at her ear, her free hand flat on a page. The wine-dark dress caught the lamplight along her hip and shoulder. Her cachos moved a little as she tilted her head, listening. She was not startled. She had heard the door. She did not turn. "Chairman," she was saying into the phone in the same low-level voice he had heard her use on lawyers and ministers, and once, memorably, on a man who had put his hand on her arm at a gala. "You have 3 minutes remaining. I would advise you to spend them speaking rather than breathing." Tiho did not move. He stood in the doorway with one hand still on the handle and watched her. The paper across the table was not the paper of a woman being fired. It was the paper of a woman conducting a siege. He could see, from where he stood, the Beek family crest on the top folder. He could see the northern port maps unfolded across 2 chairs. He could see, in her handwriting, a line of Korean legal terminology so precise it made his throat close. She had not been waiting for his mercy. She had been at war for him. She had been at war for him for hours, alone, in a room where every counselor who should have stood beside her had chosen instead to leak her name to men who wanted her gone. She had been at war for him with the wine-dark dress still on from the afternoon meeting because she had not left the building since noon. She had been at war for him with cold coffee and a legal pad and a memorized number and a voice that had not once trembled. He had built an empire on the belief that he stood alone at the top of it. He was watching, from this doorway, the exact moment that belief died. The envelope in his inside pocket became suddenly, absurdly heavy. He felt it against his ribs like a small dead animal he had been carrying around all night, pretending it was a gift. Navy shifted her weight. The dress moved. The light caught the small gold at her ear. "Good," she said into the phone. "Say it again, please, Chairman. Clearly, I want to hear the words in your own voice. I have found that men your age tend to remember conversations differently in the morning." There was a pause. She listened. Tiho listened too, though he could hear nothing of the other end. He watched her mouth. He watched the line of her jaw. He watched her shoulders, not tense, not triumphant, only settled, the way a musician's shoulders settle when the piece is finally underway. "Thank you, Chairman. My counsel will be in touch before 6. Sleep well, or don't. That is no longer my concern." She lowered the receiver. She set it in its cradle without looking at it. Then, and only then, she turned. She looked at him without surprise. Her eyes were tired and clear. She had been crying at some point, hours ago maybe, and she had washed her face and reapplied nothing because Navy Klein did not repair her armor in front of the enemy, and she had not yet decided which one he was tonight. Her gaze went to his hand, still on the door handle. Then to his coat. Then to the shape of the envelope in his inside pocket, which he had not known was visible. She smiled. It was a small smile. It did not reach her eyes. "You came all the way down here," she said, "to bring me a letter." Tiho did not answer. "Close the door, Mr. Kang." Her voice was very quiet. "What we are about to say to each other is not for the corridor." He stepped fully into the room. The heavy door swung shut behind him with the small patient weight of a thing that had been waiting years to close on exactly this scene. He turned the lock himself, slowly, because he wanted her to hear him choose it. Then he faced her again across the length of the walnut table, and for the first time in 8 years, he did not know which of them was the employer. He closed the door behind him. The lock clicked, small and final, and the room became a room with only 2 people in it, and every unspoken word of the last 8 years began, at last, to line up along the walls like witnesses waiting to be called. Navy did not look up when the door closed. She had heard him come down the private stairwell, the specific weight of his step on the 4th stair, the one that always groaned under Kang Tiho and no one else, and she had chosen, in that half-second, to keep her eyes on the phone at the corner of the desk. The speaker light glowed red. Beek Junsik was still breathing on the other end, and a breath from that man was a document in itself. "Chairman Beek," she said, and her voice was the same tone she used for closing balance sheets. You were about to tell me why your daughter's name appears in a clause you claim you did not draft. There was a pause that told her she had won something. She did not celebrate it. She wrote 3 letters in the margin of the contract in front of her, the initials of a man in Busan who would need a call before sunrise, and waited. You are a very brave employee, Beek said at last. His voice was the sound of gravel being poured into a silk glove. Do you know what happens to brave employees in the city, Miss Klein? They get promoted or buried, Navy answered. I have accepted both possibilities since I was 22. Answer the question, Chairman. T-Ho did not move from the door. She felt him not moving. It was a specific kind of stillness. The stillness of a man who had come into a room to do one thing and had discovered in the doorway that the room was doing something else entirely. The envelope was in his left hand. She had seen it in her peripheral vision and named it before she looked at it. Termination letters had a weight the paper did not explain. The clause, Beek said, is a courtesy, a gesture. Your Chairman Kang and I have discussed the shape of the union for 11 months. My daughter understands her role. Your daughter, Navy said, wrote me a letter 3 weeks ago from a phone that is not registered to her family. She used a courier who does not appear on any Beek payroll. She asked me, a stranger, an employee, a woman with no name in your world, to make sure the marriage did not happen. Would you like me to read the letter to you, Chairman, or would you prefer that I fax it to the 2 board members of yours who still remember what honor smells like? Silence, long enough that she could hear the small mechanical breath of the phone itself. T-Ho had taken 1 step into the room. She did not turn. She raised 1 finger, the smallest gesture, the kind of gesture a conductor makes to hold a note, and he stopped. He stopped because she had asked him to, and because he had spent the walk down the stairwell learning something about himself that he had not yet named. You are threatening the head of a family, Beek said. His voice had changed. It was no longer gravel. It was iron cooling. I am negotiating, Navy said. There is a difference, and you know it, because men like you invented the difference. You tried to sell your own daughter as a Trojan horse into a house you cannot enter through the front door. You dressed it as an alliance. You told Chairman Kang it was peace. It was a siege in a wedding dress. She turned 1 page. She did not raise her voice. I am offering you an alternative that does not require Yuna's body as a signature. Behind her, T-Ho's breath went out of him in a way that was almost inaudible. Almost. She heard it. She marked it in the same private ledger where she kept every other sound he had ever made in her presence over 8 years, and she kept her eyes on the phone. What? Beek said. Alternative. Kang Dominion Holdings withdraws from the Eastern Port bid. You withdraw from the Northern Hotel Corridor. Neither of you touches the freight corridor into Incheon for 18 months. In return, the debt your cousin owes to the Ryo family, the one you have been hiding in the 3rd subsidiary of your logistics arm, becomes a Kang problem, absorbed at 40 cents on the one closed by Friday. Your daughter walks. No marriage, no clause, no signature that costs her a life. Ridiculous, Beek said, but he said it slowly. He said it the way a man says a word he is testing to see if it still fits in his mouth. You have, Navy said, and she looked at the small brass clock on the corner of the desk, until midnight. Not because I like theater. Because at 00:01 the letter your daughter sent me arrives, unredacted, on the desks of 3 men whose names you will not enjoy hearing. One of them is your brother-in-law. One of them is the auditor who signed off on your last quarterly. The third is a person whose relationship to you I will describe only as complicated. You know the third name, Chairman. You have known it since 1998. The line went very quiet. Navy allowed herself, for the first time, a small breath. She did not smile. She was not smiling. She was doing a thing that looked like calm and was actually the exact opposite, a controlled burn. The kind foresters set to save a mountain from a fire that would otherwise take everything. Miss Klein, Beek said, and his voice had a new note in it. Not fear. Men like him did not learn fear this late in their lives. It was something worse for him. It was recalculation. You are a remarkable young woman. I am a tired one, Navy said. Midnight, Chairman. She was not looking at the phone anymore. She was looking at a spot on the wall 6 inches above the speaker, where the paint had a hairline crack she had noticed her 2nd week in this office and had never mentioned to anyone. She stared at the crack, and she said the next sentence to the crack, and to the room, and to the man behind her, and to a version of herself that was 8 years younger and had walked into this building with a suitcase and a resume and no idea what her own voice sounded like when it was allowed to be this quiet, and this loud at the same time. But he does not deserve to be sold inside a marriage he hates. Her voice broke on the word hates. Not much. A crack the width of the one in the paint. She did not repeat the sentence. She did not clean it. She let the crack stay. T-Ho crossed the room in 4 steps. He did not touch her. He reached past her. His cufflink caught the desk lamp. His sleeve smelled of the cold air of the stairwell and pressed the red button on the phone. The line went dead. The speaker light went out. The room fell into a stillness so complete that Navy could hear her own pulse in her ears and the soft mechanical tick of the brass clock, and farther away, the low hum of the building itself, a hum she had never fully noticed in 8 years of nights. He did not step back. He stayed there, half leaning over her desk, one hand flat on the mahogany, the other still holding the envelope. She did not look up at him. She looked at the envelope. She looked at the way his knuckles had gone white on it. She looked at his fingers, long, elegant, the small silver of the watch on his wrist, and she thought, with a clarity that surprised her, that she had memorized this hand years ago without asking her mind for permission. "Stand up," he said, softly. It was not an order. It was a man asking a room to please rearrange itself. She stood. She smoothed the front of the wine-colored dress with 2 flat palms because her mother had taught her that a woman stands up all the way when a man asks, or she does not stand up at all. She turned to face him. He was closer than she had calculated. She kept her chin level. "You came to fire me," she said. It was not a question. She had seen the envelope. She had seen the seal. She had seen his name in the corner in the specific font the legal department used for terminations and only for terminations. "I came to protect you," T-Ho said. Navy tilted her head very slightly. She let 3 seconds pass. She let him hear the 3 seconds. Then she said, gently, in the voice she used with junior analysts who had made an honest mistake and were about to be told exactly how honest and exactly how much a mistake. Men love to call cowardice protection. He flinched. He was a man who did not flinch, and he flinched. It was the smallest movement, a tightening of the jaw, a shift of the weight from one foot to the other, and she saw it, and she filed it, and she did not soften. "They are asking about you," he said. "The Beak men. My counsel, someone leaked your name to a broker in Gangnam last week. There was a photograph of you leaving this building on Tuesday. It was passed at a dinner I was not invited to. Do you understand what that means, Navy?" He had never used her name before, not once in 8 years. He had called her Miss Klein. He had called her the assistant. He had called her twice in a meeting that went badly, my right hand, and she had noted it and said nothing. He had never said Navy. He said it now like a man setting down a glass he had been holding too long. "I understand," she said, "exactly what it means. I understood it before you did. That is why the letter to Chairman Beek's daughter was already in a courier's hand 9 days ago. That is why the freight corridor clause was drafted 6 days ago. That is why the phone call you just interrupted was scheduled for 23:48 and not a minute later, because Chairman Beek eats dinner at 21:00, drinks until 23:30, and is at his most honest and least strategic between 23:45 and 00:15. I did not need protecting, Chairman Kang. I needed you to answer your phone at 23:12 and you did not." "I was reading this," he said. He lifted the envelope. He did not open it. He did not need to. "I was reading it for the 4th time." "I know," she said. "I timed it." He almost laughed. It was not a laugh. It was a sound a man makes when he realizes that the ground he has been standing on has been mapped by someone else for a very long time, and the map is better than his and the map is kind. "Sit down," she said. He sat. He sat in the chair on the wrong side of her desk. The visitor's chair, the leather one with the small crack in the arm, and he set the envelope between them, face down, and he did not take his eyes off her. She sat too, slowly, and she folded her hands on top of the contract, and she said what she had wanted to say for 6 weeks and had not permitted herself to draft even in the private document she kept in her mind for such sentences. "You wrote a letter to fire me because you were afraid they would come for me. You dressed it as severance. You made the number generous. You added a non-compete that was structured to look punitive, but was actually structured to keep me alive. Because if I could not work in this city for 18 months, no one in this city would have a reason to touch me. You thought you were being cruel to be kind. You were being cowardly to be comfortable. There is a difference, Chairman. I have spent 8 years teaching you the difference between similar words. Let me teach you one more. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. He was leaning forward across her desk like a man in a confessional who had walked in expecting a small sin and had been handed a mirror. Protection, she said, is a thing you build with the person, not around them. You do not fire the woman you are afraid for. You promote her. You put her name on the door next to yours. You make her so visible that no one can move against her without moving against the entire house. You make her cost too much to touch. That is what a man who is not afraid does. What you did tonight, she tapped the envelope once, gently, with one finger, is what a man does when he is more afraid of what he feels than of what they might do. He closed his eyes, for 1 full second. She counted it. When he opened them, something in them had shifted, not softened exactly. Men like him did not soften. Something more useful had happened. He had stopped performing. He was, for perhaps the first time in the 8 years she had known him, sitting in front of her as himself and not as the chairman of Kang Dominion Holdings. How long, he said, have you known? That you were going to try to fire me tonight? Since Tuesday. That the beak clause was a Trojan horse, since the 2nd week of drafting. That your council has 2 men inside it who wear your ring and take Beak's money? Since March. That Unibeak is a hostage in her own house and has been trying from the inside to bring the whole thing down with a single letter to a woman she has never met. Navy allowed herself, for the first time all night, the smallest of smiles. It did not reach her eyes. Since the letter arrived, 9 days ago, Wednesday, 4:11 in the afternoon, I was drinking coffee that had gone cold. I remember the temperature of the cup. He looked at her. He looked at her the way a man looks at a coastline he has been sailing past for years and has never, until this moment, actually seen. And you did not tell me, he said. I did not tell you, she said, because until tonight I did not know whether the man who signs my paycheck was also the man who would sit in that chair and listen. Now I know. Now we can talk. The brass clock on the corner of her desk ticked once, very small, and the number on its face turned over to 23:59. Somewhere in the building, an elevator began to move. Somewhere farther away, in a house in Seongbukdong, a chairman named Beak was pouring himself a drink he did not want and looking at a phone that was not yet ringing. And calculating, for the first time in 40 years, that he might have to lose something in order to keep something else. And in the small pool of lamplight on the mahogany desk between them, the envelope with Tiho's name in the corner sat face down like a small white coffin for a version of him that was, at last, finished. He reached out. He picked up the envelope. He tore it once cleanly along its length. He tore it a second time across the width. He set the 4 pieces down in a small square on the desk, aligned at the edges, the way a man arranges a hand of cards he has decided not to play. Then talk, he said. She did not talk immediately. She let the silence do a small piece of work first, the silence that told a man on the other side of a table that the next sentence would cost him something. There is a second contract, she said. Black folder on the credenza behind you, no marriage. A joint operating agreement, 2-year sunset. It gives Beak what he actually needs, access, dignity, a public reason for withdrawing from the port bid without looking weak. It gives you the freight corridor, the Ryu debt closed at a discount, and a signed non-aggression on the northern hotels. It gives Yuna what she asked for. Her name appears nowhere. She walks out of her father's house on Saturday with a passport, a scholarship to Milan that is already paid, and a driver who does not answer to anyone in the city. All of that is in that folder. All you have to do is sign the last page. Tiho did not turn to look at the credenza. He kept his eyes on her. You drafted an alternative deal, he said, and did not show it to me. I drafted 7, she said. Showed you 2. The other 5 were exercises. The one in the folder is the only one that survives contact with a chairman who drinks between 21:00 and 23:30, and a daughter who writes letters on unregistered phones. I did not show it to you because until 9 days ago I was not certain the daughter existed as a signal and not as a decoy. Wednesday, 4/11. On Thursday I finished the draft. On Friday I made 3 copies. One is in that folder. One is with a notary in Uedo who does not know my real name. The third is in a bank neither Beek nor Kang has ever done business with. You built a redundancy, Tiho said. I built 3, you taught me. In 2019, after the shipping strike, you told a room of 11 men that a plan without 3 exits was not a plan, it was a prayer. I wrote it down that night on the back of a receipt. It is in the second drawer of this desk, under the pen tray. He looked at her for a long time. He did not look at the drawer. He did not look at the folder. He looked at her, and his mouth moved once as if he were about to say something and had decided against it. And then he said the thing he had decided against. I have, he said quietly, underestimated you every single day for 8 years. You have, Navy said, underestimated me in public. In private you have not underestimated me at all. That is the part that has been the most tiring, Chairman, publicly asking a woman to be less than what you privately already know she is. The brass clock ticked over. 0000. Midnight. The phone on the desk did not ring, not yet, but the small green light on its base pulsed once. The pulse of an incoming line being opened somewhere in the building, held and released. Somewhere on the 22nd floor, a security guard she had personally cleared for tonight's shift was routing a call from a private number in Seongbukdong to her extension and to no other. She did not look at the phone. She let it wait. She let Chairman Beek learn, for the first time in his life, what it felt like to be the one who had to hold. Then talk, Tiho said again, softer, and this time it was not a command. It was almost a request. Navy did not answer right away. She let the silence do what silence does when it belongs to the person holding the leverage. She looked down at the contract on the desk, at the red pen resting across the line where Unibeek's name had been written in careful Hangul, and she moved the pen a 1/4 inch to the left. A small gesture. A woman rearranging her own kitchen. But Tiho tracked it like a man watching a weapon slide across a table toward the side that could still use it. There is nothing to talk about, she said. You wrote a letter. I read most of it. The rest I can guess. Navy, do not, she said. Do not say my name like it costs you something. It does not. It costs me. He stopped where he was. The letter hung from his hand, a white flag that had arrived too late to matter. She watched him look at the desk. At the contracts fanned open around her like a hand of cards she had already won. At the phone still warm from Chairman Beek's breathing. At the small crystal glass with 3 fingers of water in it, because she had been too disciplined to pour herself the whiskey she had earned. He counted. She saw him count. Signatures, clauses, cross-outs. The little marginal notes in her handwriting that read asterisk leverage asterisk, asterisk decoy asterisk, asterisk do not sign before 0600 asterisk. He counted the way a general counts a battlefield after the smoke lifts and realizes the map he brought was for a different war. You did this tonight, he said, not a question. I did this in the last 4 hours, she said. The alternative agreement took 6 weeks. I have been building it since the day you told me the Beek family had asked for a meeting. Alone. Everyone I would have asked for help works for them now. The muscle in his jaw moved. His right hand came up, slow, and passed along the line of his jawbone the way it did when a number in a room did not add up. He looked at her, and for the first time since she had known him, Kang Tiho looked at a person on his payroll and did not see a subordinate. He saw a peer. He saw, and this was the thing that made his shoulders drop 1/2 centimeter, a superior. You did the work of 10 men on my council, he said. His voice was quiet. It was the voice he used with old men who had been in the game before he had a name. 10 men who have been failing me for 6 months and calling it strategy. You did it in one night, in a dress, without a single one of them in the room. I did it in a dress because I was going to be fired in it, Navy said. I wanted the photograph to be memorable. Something moved behind his eyes, not amusement, something older than that. The recognition of a person who had, without permission, refused to become smaller in front of him. He set the letter down on the corner of the desk. He did not tear it. He did not apologize for it. He placed it the way a man places a knife he no longer intends to use, where both of them could see it, so no one would have to pretend later that it had never existed. "The name on the contract," he said. "What about it? It will be yours." The room did the thing rooms do when a sentence is spoken that cannot be taken back. The city noise below dropped a level. The lamp on the desk seemed to lean in. Navy did not move. She did not breathe faster. She had waited 2 years to hear a version of that sentence, and she had promised herself that when it arrived, she would not thank the man who said it. "No," she said. He blinked. "Once. Slow." "No, no," Navy said again. "Not like that, not as a clause, not as a repair, not as the boss of Kang Dominion Holdings redrafting a merger because he ran out of pieces. If my name goes on a contract with yours, Mr. Kang, it does not go there because you rewrote a document. It goes there because you asked me, as a man, standing on your feet without an emergency in the next room." "Navy, I am not done. If you want a wife who runs your empire, you can hire one on the open market. There are 5 in this building alone who would sign tonight for the title. If you want me, you ask like a man who has already understood that I am not a promotion. I am a decision, and decisions are not made under a rival's ultimatum at 11:52 at night." She looked at the clock on the wall behind him. The second hand ticked. He turned his head unconsciously to check the number. 11:54. She waited until his eyes came back to hers. "There is time," she said, "but not for the version you were about to try." He was quiet a long moment. Then he pulled one of the leather chairs out from the wall, slowly, the legs whispering across the rug, and sat down opposite her without asking. He put his forearms on his knees. He looked, for once, like a man in his own building instead of on top of it. The dragon at his collar shifted with his breath. "Tell me what you have," he said. She turned the top contract around and slid it across the desk toward him. He did not touch it. He read it upside down first, the way he read every document that mattered, so that if the person who wrote it was watching his face, they would not learn anything from the order of his frown. "This is not the merger," he said, after a full minute. "No, this is a cooperative structure. Kang Dominion retains full ownership of the ports and the transport wings. The Beek family gets a 15-year non-compete on hotels above 4 stars, a courier corridor through Instea on our terms, and a quarterly audit clause that lets us walk away the moment they miss a filing." "They will miss a filing," Navy said. "They always do. There is no marriage in this document. No, there is no bride. No." He looked up. His eyes were very dark. "Then how did you get Chairman Beek to consider it at 11:48 at night, with his lawyers asleep and his son in Macau?" "I did not," Navy said. "Una Beek did." The silence that followed was different from the ones before it. It was the silence of a man reordering 3 months of his own life in real time. He sat back in the chair. He did not speak. Navy let him not speak. "The first anonymous tip," he said eventually. 3 months ago, about the shell company in Busan. Una, the photographs of the courier route. Una, the name of the accountant who flipped. Una sent me the file from a phone that is not in any of our records. She has been feeding me pieces since the day her father told her she was going to be married to you. She did not know me. She knew a woman worked in your office who might read a document instead of a headline. She took the risk. Why? Because she has been sold twice already, Mr. Kang. Once at 19 to a man in Osaka who returned her at 21 with a broken wrist and a signed non-disclosure. And once at 24 to a cousin of the Choi family who died of a stroke on the honeymoon before he could touch her, which her father called a blessing and she called the only lucky night of her life. She was not going to survive a third. He closed his eyes, just for a moment. When he opened them, there was a thing in them she had not seen before. Not anger. Anger was easy for him. This was slower. This was the thing anger becomes when a man realizes he almost signed his name to somebody else's cruelty. "I did not know," he said. "I know you did not know. That is why I did the work quietly. If you had known, you would have canceled the merger the wrong way, in a room full of Beek's men, and given him a reason to move on us before dawn. This way, Una sends her father into a corner where his only exit is a signature on a document that does not include her body. She walks out of her father's house with a clean file and a legal name that is finally her own. And you. And me. He waited. Navy set the pen down. She folded her hands on top of the contracts, the way she folded them in every meeting when she was about to say the sentence that ended the meeting. Her voice was quiet and it did not shake. Maybe the problem with the Mafia, she said, is too many men who think women are bridges, something you walk across to get to the other side, something you build so that traffic can move from one family to another. You look at a woman and you see a route. Chairman Beek looked at his daughter and saw a road into your company. Your counsel looked at me for 2 years and saw a hallway between your office and the rest of the building. She lifted her eyes. Sometimes we are not the bridges, Mr. King. Sometimes we are the architects. We are the ones who decide which river gets crossed and where the crossing goes and whether the crossing exists at all. Unibeek did not build a bridge tonight. She burned one, and she asked me to draw the map of the new city on the other side. He did not speak. He watched her the way a man watches whether he has never seen before over land he has owned all his life. That contract you brought down here in your jacket, Navy said, softer now. The letter, the severance, the 3 months in advance and the small speech about protection. I read enough of it to know that you thought you were being kind. I want you to hear this once, and I will not say it to you again. Kindness that removes a woman from the room where she is winning is not kindness. It is a promotion for your own comfort. Call it what it is. Cowardice, he said. Yes. Dressed as protection. Yes. His hand moved to the letter on the desk. He picked it up. He did not tear it into pieces the way a lesser man would have for drama. He folded it once, twice into a neat rectangle, and he pushed it across the desk to her on her side so that it belonged to her now. Keep it, he said. Why? So that if I ever try that again, you can hand it back to me, and I will know what I am. Navy took the folded letter. She placed it under the paperweight at the corner of her desk, the small brass one shaped like a mountain that he had given her for her second Christmas at the company, with no card. She had never asked him if he remembered giving it. He had never asked her if she still had it. It had been on that corner every day for 2 years, holding down documents that ended other people's careers. Now it held the letter that had almost ended hers. 12 minutes, she said, glancing at the clock. Chairman Beek is waiting for a call on the number I gave him. His alternative agreement is on the 3rd page of the file next to your right hand. His signature line is at the bottom. His initials go in the boxes I marked in pencil. If he does not sign by midnight, the file goes to the prosecutor in Siacho at 6 in the morning, along with the courier route photographs, the accountant, and a very quiet transcript of a phone call in which he named a person he thought he was going to trade like livestock. You recorded him. I record every call after 11 at night. It is in the employment contract you made me sign in year 1. Page 11, clause 4, I wrote that clause. He almost smiled. He did not quite. His mouth moved a millimeter and stopped, because whatever he was about to feel he was not going to give her yet, not before the rest. Call him, Tiho said. You call him, Navy said. I did my part of the night. The last 4 minutes belong to the boss of Kang Dominion Holdings, and I want the boss of Kang Dominion Holdings to say the sentences I am about to hand him, in the voice he uses when a man needs to remember which chair he is sitting in. She turned the phone toward him. She slid a small index card across the desk. 6 lines, typed in her precise sans serif, single-spaced, no adjectives. He read them. He looked up. You wrote my script. I wrote the script that keeps you alive and keeps him signing. If you want to improvise, improvise the second half of your life. This half, read what I gave you. He picked up the phone. He dialed. Chairman Beek answered on the first ring, and his voice was no longer arrogant. It was the voice of an old man who had been standing next to a phone for 9 minutes waiting for a call from a person he had, 4 hours ago, considered beneath him. Tiho read the 6 lines, word for word. He did not look at Navy while he read. He looked at the folded letter under the mountain. When he finished the last sentence, he waited. Chairman Beek said one word, in Korean, and it was the word that meant asterisk yes asterisk, but only in the register a man uses when he has run out of other words. Tiho ended the call. He set the phone down, screen up, so that both of them could watch the notification when the countersigned document arrived. It arrived at 11:59. A small chime, A PDF. Navy did not look at it, she looked at him. "There is one more thing," she said. "Tell me. I will not marry a contract, and I will not marry a repair. If there is a version of the next sentence you were going to try in this office tonight, do not try it here. Not on this floor, not in this dress, not while your dragon is still visible above your collar, and my hands still smell like the printer toner from a document that saved your quarter. Then where? Wherever you decide the man Kang Tae-ho lives when he is not the boss of Kang Dominion Holdings. I have never met him. 2 years, and I have never met him. Tonight the boss saw me clearly for the first time. I will wait to see if the man is capable of the same thing." He was quiet a moment. Then he stood. He did not straighten his jacket. He did not smooth his hair. He walked around the desk, slowly, the way a man walks who has been given permission to enter a room for the first time in his life, and he stopped one step short of where he could have touched her. He did not touch her. "Give me an hour," he said. "Do not leave the building." "I was not going to. Do not answer the phone." "I was not going to answer any phone except yours." "Navy?" "Yes." "Thank you," he said, and it was the smallest sentence he had said all night, and it was the one that mattered. He turned. He walked to the door. He stopped at the threshold with his hand on the frame, and he did not look back at her when he spoke, because looking back would have made it a request and he needed it to be a promise. "When I come back to this floor," he said, "I will come back as a man, not as your employer, not as the head of a family, not as a person carrying a letter. If the man is not enough for you, tell him that to his face. He can survive it. The boss cannot." He left. The door closed with the soft, expensive click of a hinge that had been oiled by someone who was paid well to make sure doors closed quietly in the hours when history was being decided on the other side of them. Navy stood alone in the office. The city outside kept doing what cities do. She looked down at the contract with Unibeek's name crossed out in her own red ink, and at the space where a new name would eventually be written, and at the folded letter under the brass mountain that would remain there for the rest of her career as a small private monument to the night a man had almost fired the woman who was saving him. She did not cry. She did not sit down. She walked to the window, and she pressed her palm flat against the glass, and she waited for the hour to pass. Somewhere below, an elevator descended toward the private floor where Kang Tae-ho kept a life he had never shown anyone. The elevator stopped on the private floor. Navy did not turn from the window. She heard the doors slide open, the soft mechanical exhale, then a single set of footsteps crossing the marble. She knew the weight of that walk. She had memorized it across 3 years of hallways. Kang Tae-ho did not speak immediately. He walked to the center of the office, stopped a respectful distance behind her, and set something small on the corner of her desk. She heard the muted click of velvet against wood. She did not turn. "You did not sit down," he said. His voice was low, careful, sanded of every corporate edge she had ever heard him wear. "You have been standing at that window for 40 minutes. 43, Navy said. Her palm was still flat on the glass. "I like accurate numbers." "I know." Below them, the city moved in its usual patterns, headlights sliding along the boulevard, a ferry crawling across the Han River. Somewhere in Gangnam, Baek Joon-sik was still awake in a study lined with leather, holding a pen he did not want to sign. She had left him no other posture. "Turn around, Navy." "In a moment. I am not asking as your employer." "I know that, too." She let the silence stretch. She was not being cruel. She was giving him the seconds he needed. She had watched Tae-ho for 3 years. She knew that when he stood too still, he was assembling sentences the way other men assembled weapons. He did not deserve to be interrupted while he did that. She lifted her palm from the glass. The shape of her hand remained for a breath, a pale ghost of heat, then faded. She turned. He looked different in her office at this hour. The overhead lights were off. Only the desk lamp burned, and the amber glow from the city climbed halfway up his suit. The dragon on his neck moved when he swallowed. His hands were empty. He had left the resignation letter on the 22nd floor. She had watched him do it in her mind the moment she heard the elevator descend. Between them, on the corner of her desk, sat a small square box in deep navy velvet. She did not look at it. She looked at him. "You brought a prop," she said. "I brought a truth. Those are usually the same thing in this building. Not tonight." He took one step closer, only one. He was measuring her air the way he measured a room before entering it. She let him. She had earned the right to be approached slowly. 6 months, he said. 6 months what? I bought that ring 6 months ago. He did not gesture at the box. He kept his eyes on hers. The day you reorganized an entire quarterly review after the district blackout, the generators failed at 9:17. By 9:42, you had moved 12 executives, 3 translators, and 2 beak observers into the auxiliary boardroom. You served coffee at 9:46. You corrected my opening remark at 9:49. You did not know I was watching you the whole time. I knew. Of course you did. You touched your jaw twice during my correction, she said. You only do that when you are impressed and refuse to say so. His mouth moved. It was not quite a smile. It was closer to surrender. I walked out of that boardroom, he said, and I sent a driver to Cheongdam. I told him what to bring back. I told him not to speak of it. He did not speak of it. The box has been in a drawer inside a safe, inside a wall, inside a house I have not slept in for 2 months. Because you have been sleeping here. Because I have been sleeping near you. Navy did not move. She let the sentence land. She let it walk the room. She had spent 3 years training herself not to react to Kang Tae-ho, and now she was going to spend the rest of the night unlearning that discipline in careful, measured doses. Say the next part, she said. He walked the rest of the way. He did not stop at the desk. He came around it. He came to the space where the amber light from the window turned the carpet gold, and he lowered himself onto one knee, and he did it without theater. He did it the way a man kneels who has already decided the sentence is worth more than his pride. He reached without looking. His fingers found the velvet box. He opened it. The ring inside was not loud. Navy noted that first. It was a single dark stone, deep and clean, set in a band of brushed platinum. No halo, no cluster, no performance. A ring for a woman who read contracts for a living and hated ornament that did not carry meaning. Navy Klein, he said. Yes. Do not answer yet. Listen. I am listening. I am not asking you to marry me to unite territories. I am not asking you to marry me to close a deal. I am not asking you to marry me because a rival family tried to sell his own daughter into my house, and I need a counterweight. He paused. He breathed. I am asking you to marry me so that every morning for the rest of my life, I have to look at the woman who taught me that power without her is only noise. The room did not move. Even the city seemed to lower its volume for a breath. That is a long sentence, Tae-ho. I rehearsed it in the elevator. It shows. Navy. I know. She looked at him, really looked. The angle of his jaw in this light. The dragon coiled up his neck, dark against the white of his collar. The hand that held the box was steady. The other rested on his thigh, palm open, unguarded. She had never seen his palm open. Not in 3 years, not in any meeting. He kept his hands in fists or on documents or, once, on the small of her back for exactly 2 seconds when she nearly slipped on a wet lobby floor and he pretended not to catch her. She walked to him, slowly, salt of the earth slow. She stopped when the tips of her heels almost touched his knee. I have 3 conditions, she said. Name them. 1, I do not stop working. Not the day of the wedding, not the week after. Not when I am pregnant if I ever am. Not when your mother arrives from Busan and decides my desk should be a nursery. I keep this office or an office equal to it, and I keep my authority and I keep my name on the door. My name, Tae-ho. Klein, not Kang, not hyphenated. The company can add whatever it wants to a plaque. My door says Klein. Agreed. Do not agree that quickly. You will regret it in front of your board. I will not regret it in front of my board because my board is going to learn tomorrow morning what my council already knows tonight. 2. She held up a second finger. I will not be hidden. You will not present me as an assistant who happened to become a wife. You will not walk into rooms 3 steps ahead of me. You will not order for me at dinners with foreign partners. If a Chinese delegation flies in and expects to shake the hand of the boss, you will introduce me as the director of strategy before you introduce yourself. Every time, for the rest of our lives, even when it costs you the deal, especially when it costs you the deal. Agreed. 3. Her voice softened by a half tone, not weakness, precision. If you ever decide something on my behalf without asking me, a location, a career move, a security detail, the color of a room in a house I have not seen yet, I will not shout. I will not slam a door. I will emotionally resign. I will move into the guest wing of whatever house you have moved us into. I will speak to you only in meetings. I will smile at your mother and drink her tea and never once refer to what happened. I will do this for as long as it takes for you to remember that I am a person, not a portfolio. And then, when you remember, I will come back to your bed and I will act as though nothing happened because I am generous. But I will remember. Forever. Do you understand what I am telling you? He did not answer immediately. He was looking up at her the way a man looks at whether he has been warned about and has decided to walk into anyway. I understand, he said. I am terrified. Good, Navy. Yes. Is that the answer? She reached down. She took the ring from the box herself. She did not let him slide it onto her finger. She slid it on her own hand and looked at it in the amber light and turned her palm once to catch the shine. That is the answer, she said. He rose. He rose the way tall men rise from one knee, slowly, hip first, weight balanced. When he stood, they were close enough that she could smell the cedar and paper and the faint iron of a long day. He did not embrace her. He did not touch her yet. He waited for her hand. She lifted it. She placed her palm flat against his chest over the third button of his waistcoat, and she felt his heart do exactly what she had suspected his heart did in private. You are shaking, she said. I know. So am I. You do not look like you are shaking. That is a skill. He laughed. It was the first laugh she had heard from him that did not have a corporate joke wrapped around it. It came out unpolished. It escaped him. She cataloged the sound and put it in a drawer inside her chest where she was going to keep every unpolished thing he ever did. By sunrise, Seoul had folded itself into a different shape. The acknowledgement came from the Beek estate at 6:17 in the morning. Not by phone, by paper. A courier in a black coat, gloved, silent, delivering a leather folder to the guardhouse of the Kang building. Inside the folder, the alternative agreement Navy had drafted, every clause, every carve-out, every silent surrender, signed at the bottom in Beek June 6's slow, arrogant hand. He had used a fountain pen. He had not dared to use anything less. Navy read the signature standing in the lobby in the same wine dress she had worn all night. She had not gone home. She had not slept. Her curls were still perfect, her lipstick refreshed once at 4 in the morning, her posture untouched by fatigue. Tiho stood a half step behind her, only a half step. He was learning already. She closed the folder. He signed with his own name, she said. He did. He could have delegated it to a proxy. He could not. He knew who was reading. At 9 that morning, in a private tea room 3 blocks from the estate, Una Beek arrived without an escort. She wore the pearl silk again. Her eyes were still tired, still determined, but a different kind of tired now. The kind of tired that follows a door closing behind you for the last time. Navy poured tea for both of them. Una watched the way she poured. A small, quiet smile touched the corner of her mouth. You did not sit down until you had served me, Una said. Habit. You are not an assistant anymore, Miss Klein. I am always the person who pours first. That is not about status. That is about attention. Una wrapped her fingers around the small cup. The steam moved up her face. He signed it, she said. I know. He signed it because you cornered him. He signed it because you knew about the shell company in Macau and the 2 ledgers in Ilsen and the boy in the boarding school in Zurich. I know. You did not use any of it against him. I did not need to. Navy set the pot down. The threat of using it was more valuable than the use. Una's smile deepened by a millimeter. It was the first real smile Navy had ever seen on a Beek face. Thank you, Una said. You sent the first note. I did. Why? Una looked into her tea for a long moment. Outside, a sparrow landed on the wooden lattice and considered the room and flew away. Because I have watched my father dress me for other men's houses since I was 19, Una said. Because I would rather be no one's wife than his currency. Because I heard your name once at a dinner and I asked who you were and my father said, she is nothing, she is a Klein, she is a foreign assistant, she will be gone in a season. And I thought, if she is nothing, why does he say her name like a wound? She lifted her eyes. I decided to help the wound. Navy did not answer. She lifted her cup. They drank. At 10:30, the boardroom on the 42nd floor filled. The council came in the order they always came. The oldest first, walking with a slight limp he refused to acknowledge. The 2 loyalists next, quiet and watchful. Then the three who had been passing paper to the Beak family for months, walking a fraction too casually, their eyes moving a fraction too much. Then the two younger advisors who had not yet chosen a side and were about to be given no time to choose. T-Ho entered last. He was not alone. Navy walked beside him. Not behind, not ahead. Beside. She wore a charcoal suit she had changed into upstairs, the wine dress folded neatly in a garment bag she would keep for the rest of her life. Her ring caught the light exactly once as she pulled out her own chair before anyone could pull it out for her. The room understood before T-Ho spoke. Half the men understood and adjusted their faces. Half the men understood and could not. T-Ho did not sit. He stood at the head of the table and rested one hand flat on the wood. He looked at each man in turn. He gave the infiltrators the same amount of eye contact as the loyalists. He did not perform his knowledge. He simply carried it into the room. 2 announcements, he said. The council waited. First, the agreement with the Beak family regarding a marital alliance is dissolved. In its place, we have signed an alternative commercial agreement. It is on the table in front of you. It is generous to us. It is survivable for them. It is closed. A pen dropped somewhere. No one moved to pick it up. Second, his hand did not leave the wood. Effective this morning, Navy Klein is no longer the executive assistant to the chairman. She is the director of strategy of Kang Dominion Holdings. She reports to no one on this council. This council reports to her on any matter she wishes to review. Nothing. Then quietly the pen was retrieved from the floor by the man closest to it. He set it back on the table with 2 hands. Third announcement, T-Ho said, and now his voice softened by a fraction that only Navy caught. In the spring, Miss Klein will also be my wife. The wedding will be small. The company will not carry her name. Her office will. The oldest advisor rose. He did not speak. He bowed. It was not a full bow. It was the bow of a man who had lived long enough to recognize a shift in a room and had lived long enough to survive it by acknowledging it first. One by one, the loyalists followed. The infiltrators rose last. Their bows were shallower. Navy noted the depth of each one. She would remember. That evening the office was quiet again. The council had scattered. The building was returning to its normal rhythm, cleaners on the lower floors, security at the gates, drivers in the underground garage warming engines. Navy stood at her desk, not the window, the desk. She was reading, of all things, the security roster for the following week. There was a knock at her door. She lifted her eyes. T-Ho stood in the doorway. He had knocked, he had not opened, he was waiting. "You knocked," she said. "I am afraid of the emotional resignation. You should be. May I come in? You may." He crossed the office. He stopped at the corner of her desk, where the velvet box had sat the night before. He looked at the empty spot as though the box were still there. "I have a confession," he said. "Only one. For today. Proceed." He looked at her. In the low light, the dragon on his neck moved when he swallowed. "Loving a woman who reads clauses better than I read enemies," he said, "is terrifying. I do not know how to hide anything from you. I do not know how to protect you the way I was raised to protect. Every instinct I have is wrong for this marriage. I am going to fail at it in ways I cannot predict. I need you to know I know this. I need you to know I chose it anyway." Navy set the security roster down. She walked around the desk. She did not stop at a polite distance this time. She stopped where her shoes touched his. "T-Ho." "Yes." "Every instinct you have is wrong. That is why you have me." "Yes." "Now take me home." He offered his arm. She took it, not because she needed it, because she wanted to be seen taking it. They walked to the elevator together. On the way down through the private lobby, 2 guards stood at the door in their usual posture. When T-Ho and Navy stepped out of the elevator, both guards bowed, deeply. Not to him, to them, as a unit. Navy watched them bow and understood that the language of this building had already changed and would never change back. Outside, the car was waiting. The driver opened the door. Navy paused. She looked up at the building she had walked into 3 years earlier as a foreign assistant with a resume and a level of English that made a receptionist laugh. She was walking back into it tomorrow as the person who decided which floors kept their lights on. She slid into the car. T-Ho followed. She was already opening a small leather planner on her lap. She turned to the next day's page. "You already have my schedule," he said. "I always had your schedule. You are frightening." "I know." He rested his head against the seat. The city slid past in gold and dark. Somewhere behind them, a rival family sat with a signed folder and a daughter who was, for the first time in her life, unowned. Navy uncapped her pen. She began to write.
If you want to watch all the stories without any ads and also get access to bonus scenes, extended epilogues, and exclusive spicy chapters, head over to our Patreon. Scan the QR code on the screen. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment.
If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been called too professional by someone who was really just afraid of how much space you actually took up in the room? Have you ever been offered protection that looked exactly like being erased and had the courage to read the clause behind the kind words? And when the man in power finally saw you, did he ask you to be his wife, or did he ask you to keep being the architect? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, architecture, and love that kneels, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.